Welcome back to New Rockstars. Marvel Studios has erased Kang from their timeline, and we now have the evidence from watching What If Season 3. A time chair without a Kang? What are you trying to pull on us, Marvel? We're going to talk all about how Marvel has had to readjust in the wake of this Jonathan Majors issue, and what that might tell us about their future plans for Avengers Doomsday. Will some plan of the Kang Dynasty film stay intact for Doomsday, or are they just throwing the Kang baby out with the bathwater?
That's right. This is the Sneak Peek, the weekly show on New Rockstars where we discuss the future of fandom. I'm Brandon Barrick, and joining me today, it's always Erik Voss.
Hi, everybody. Jessica is still recovering from her holiday break right now, but Jessica will be back with us in the weeks ahead. This is our first sneak peek of 2025.
Oh, it feels great in this year. I love it.
Daredevil Born Again coming out this year. We got Thunderbolts. We got Captain America Brave New World. Fantastic Four First Steps. Ironheart. Wonder Man. Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, Marvel Zombies. I'm super excited, specifically because we're also going to be getting information about Avengers Doomsday. I feel like every week there's some new name who's been announced. I feel like the latest one was Charlie Cox Daredevil is going to be in Avengers Doomsday. That's super exciting.
Yeah.
We'll see how that
They'll
works.
also probably start shooting a Spider-Man this year.
Oh, yeah,
right?
yeah.
We'll probably get more information about that, what that future looks like. Maybe Sony will announce new Spider-Man projects. Who knows? Now that they're done with the Spumsy?
Yeah.
Maybe not done. Maybe they are done. Who knows? They don't seem to know.
Maybe we'll finally get an announcement of when Beyond the Spider-Verse will come out. It's supposed to be last year, but not even going to be this year, I don't think.
We all left Across the Spider-Verse with the knowledge that it would be a year away for the next movie, and everyone going, it's not going to be ready in a year. We know that.
But not invited to this big party, Brandon, is one Nathaniel Richards, Kang the Conqueror, a.k.a. Victor Timely. He has been apparently erased from any plans that Marvel has for their future. Now, we had wondered what exactly they would do when they announced that the title of Avengers 5 was changing from Avengers The Kang Dynasty to something else. They announced that in like May or June 2024. And then at Comic-Con in July of 2024, they said that the title will be Avengers Doomsday and will now be a Doctor Doom-centered story starring Robert Downey Jr. All of us just kind of assumed that Kang was no longer part of the math, but we figured that, well, they've laid the groundwork for Kang still being involved somehow, and Marvel, up until this point, has never completely disavowed any of their stories, like even recastings in the past. Parts of Thor The Dark World came back. Eternals is coming back in different forms. The first 2008 Incredible Hulk film with Edward Norton in the Marvel Cinematic Universe is now coming back, with Tim Blake Nelson coming back and Captain America Brave New World. I feel like they will always find a way to fold everything in. And the amount of work they did to set up Kang as like at least a player on the stage, we thought would come into form in some way. But now, as we watched What If Season 3, it feels like there was an episode removed. That they removed a Kang episode. And we should acknowledge that no one at Marvel Studios has acknowledged this. Brad Winderbaum has not said that there was any kind of Kang thing removed. The director of the series, Brian Andrews, told comicbook.com recently that, none of this is official, but something in my gut tells me it might be more of a pause for the time being because it just feels like there's other things we can tell, implying that there was more storylines that they were playing with.
But that maybe What If will come back in the future, even though they said they're done with it for now. Right. And this kind of like Kang erasure started with Loki season 2, right? There was that line at the end where they were like, "Oh, we've dealt with that with this with all the different versions of He Who Remains, and this one version who was dealing with like Ant-Man seems to be settled." And that seemed to be kind of a button on the ending of Ant-Man and Wasp: Quantumania, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can read it, because they were still like investigating active threats. That's what Mobius and B-15 were doing, but we knew that Loki was ending. But those characters, that someone in the TVA was still investigating this, and we knew that the TVA was going to be in Deadpool and Wolverine, so we just had to assume that the TVA will still live on in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and that the TVA will be concerned with this rising Kang threat. And that was as late as November 2003. This was after the charges were already announced for Jonathan Majors, after their Palm Springs retreat. But I think something happened at that Palm Springs retreat. I think that's when the Doom switch was decided. This was in September 2023, and Marvel Studios with their executives does their annual retreat, and they were in Palm Springs, and I believe it was Variety who reported that at that meeting was when they first started to talk about, well, should we swap out Kang for Doom and just go back to what Jonathan Hickman did in Time Runs Out in 2015 Secret Wars and just make God Emperor Doom the villain of it, because that really was the framework that they seemed to be basing everything on, based off of Multiverse of Madness and what Michael Waldron wrote in that Reed Richards monologue. But I think that decision was made. I think they were doing casting decisions, and they already had shot, and they were in post-production for Loki season 2 at that point. So they ended Loki season 2 pretty much the way they were doing, and then timing just kind of worked out on their favor because Loki season 2 came out and was done a month before Jonathan Majors' verdict came out, right? Not his sentencing, but he was found guilty of assault, and that's something that we should acknowledge. I have opinions about Marvel Studios scrapping all their plans, their narrative plans, and the way Marvel Studios assumes that their actors are their characters, and they put too much on like, well, this character and the actor have to be the same person.
You know, them making the decision to like totally scrap the narrative is interesting because they don't have to do that, right? There was those rumors right before like the writers and actors strike began that they were looking to recast Jonathan Majors, bring someone else in to play Kang. I remember like Coleman Domingo's name got floated around, lots of names. And some of that is agents trying to boost the profile of their actors, right? But I think they probably certainly considered it, and they could have easily done it, right? In a world of multiverses and variants, you could have easily brought in another actor to be like, no, this is actually the Supreme Kang. You know, people were mad when Kang lost to Ant-Man. You know, he was defeated by ants, as people complained. As I always said, that was the dumbest Kang. That Kang got stuck in the quantum realm and couldn't get out. He was the dumbest Kang. Of course he got beat by Ant-Man. But for them to like totally scrap the idea, you know, Destin Daniel Cretton was originally going to direct Kang Dynasty. You know, he stepped down from that role to focus on doing like Wonder Man, and he's gonna do Shang-Chi Part 2 and all that kind of stuff. But I think they probably considered continuing the storyline that they were very much building to, starting with like Loki season 1, and they've just decided to scrap it all, put all their eggs in the Doom basket, you know, really push forward on Fantastic Four, which was something I thought they were dragging their heels on because they got the rights to those characters years ago, and they've been really slow about rolling it out, and they wanted to do the perfect rollout. And you could argue they've done that. There's a lot of hype around that movie. But yeah, what could have been with this whole Kang storyline if they had really stuck with it and really seen it through and really built this character up as a multi-movie, multi-series villain that ends this multiverse saga?
I think they really doubled down on Jonathan Majors' acting versatility, his ability to play lots of different characters in different forms. And I will say that just judging the performance of the actor from Loki season 1, that finale, the performance he gave as He Who Remains was incredible, and the performance he gave as Victor Timely was incredible in season 2. The performance he gave as Kang the Conqueror in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania was successful. The performances he gave as the other Kang variants in the post scene is very wild and big swings that I don't know if I needed to see in a future Marvel movie. Those particular Kangs.
I want to see the guy who was like, yeah,
the one who was screaming in the stands. It was just wild, and so I think
that must have been a wild day on the volume.
I think that was Marvel Studios' mistake here, was doubling down so much on just one actor playing different incarnations rather than allowing different actors to play different forms of Kang over time. And then you can have one who plays this version of Kang, and you have 7 or 8 others.
Especially your pivotal Kangs, right? You don't want a movie where Jonathan Majors has to play 5 different Kangs that are all the main villains. Every head of the Council of Kangs was of Jonathan Majors. It's like any of those could have been a different actor.
Was the plan to have a Mike Myers, Austin Powers,
a Nutty
movie?
Professor,
a Clumps family of Kangs? It's just like you're gonna have your fat bastard Kang, you're gonna have your gold member Kang, you're gonna have your Dr. Evil Kang, and your Austin Powers Kang. It's just like at some point that would have been very goofy if they did that.
I think so.
Like even what worked about what was I gonna say? Spider-Man No Way Home was he had different actors that people had different relationships with, and for some people their favorite Spider-Man was Tobey Maguire. For some, their favorite was Andrew Garfield. For some, it was Tom Holland, and they could all be represented that way.
And they can play off each other and do a really good job with it.
But I think the idea of Kang being a Time Lord who was manipulating history from the beginning was always what I was most excited by. If we could go back through MCU history and they could retcon certain details as being the doings of Kang, I thought that was just like a really exciting prospect. And I was just interested to see like, oh, well, when, Don Cheadle is now Rhodey instead of Terrence Howard, that was a glitch in the Matrix. Like there was all these little plot holes that they could have assigned to Kang. And I think when Kang was introduced at the end of Loki season 1, I think that's where all of our heads were. That was summer 2021, and that went right into Comic-Con 2021 when like they announced was that when Ant-Man the Wasp Quantumania was announced, or was this a year later? I don't know. We spent like a year in kind of this like fun theory state of just like where this all could go. What we're really talking about, we talked about the evidence we had that Kang was erased, and what we're really referring to is in What If season 3 episode 7. So there were 8 episodes of What If season 3, and we internally at New Rockstars have been very confused by Marvel's release strategy with What If. What If season 1 was a huge success, and we're basing that off of our numbers and our breakdowns of it, and just the conversation that was being had. Like, people recognized that it was an animated series, as an anthology series, and some people had mixed opinions about the way it was revealed to not be an anthology series, but just like episodic. But many of those episodes in season 1 remain incredible pieces of storytelling, from the What If Strange tried to save Christine Palmer with a time stone? What if the Avengers were being murdered in a plot by Hank Pym? What if a zombie virus?
The zombie virus one. Even the first one, the Captain Carter one, was really interesting, and I thought really well done. And I liked how they kind of rehashed a lot of moments we knew from the Captain America movie, but put Peggy Carter in their place. I think that's a device they relied way too much on in this series, where it was often, I saw this critique online, and I agree with it. This was more like a what if the MCU was different, not what if Marvel characters had different experiences, right? Yeah. And in those flashes in that final episode, it was like of all these other cool mashups of characters, like a Wolverine Thanos, a pirate female Crossbones, like all this stuff was like crazy. That's what we wanted to see more of, right? Yeah. Instead of these kind of like little tweaks on the MCU.
Yeah, maybe this is just my entry point to What If. I really liked the sliding doors aspect of what if like just something subtle happened, a butterfly effect rippled out and changed the world. Like, what was really cool about the Doctor Strange episode was it was pretty much the same world as Doctor Strange for the 2016 film, but he just goes further and further down this dark path. And you can imagine, this whole library of Cagliostro might actually have been in South America, but Strange had no need to go there in the live action world that we saw, but it was still there. Yeah. And what if he really just like scratched that itch and kept scratching and scratching and scratching until he went down this dark path? And all the episodes, for the most part, of season 1 felt that way. They really did feel like there was this little moment.
Yeah.
And what if in this moment something else happened? And maybe my obsession with that little moment is why our own New Rockstars format of our What If show that we tried in 2024 didn't really connect with viewers as much, because I was just obsessed with like identifying what was that nexus moment in all of our lives and all of our careers. And I feel like the What If writers and animators stopped caring about that in season 2 and 3, and instead they were just like trying to ideate these other genres and then work backwards up to that genre, and it didn't work because it was like their indulgent wish fulfillment that felt kind of disconnected. And what the Marvel executives allowed them to use in terms of a cast often felt like, in season 1 there was a lot of Tony Stark, there was a lot of Bucky, there was T'Challa, there was like the stars of the MCU. We got Peter Parker in there, and then in season 3 it was all just like the phase 4 and 5 newcomers. There was like Darcy. Well, Darcy was there before, you know what I mean? But like Darcy had a new life in WandaVision.
Yeah, we had like
Agatha, Kingo,
Moon Knight, Shang-Chi, Kingo,
Red Guardian.
Yeah, Red Guardian and Melina.
Yeah, it just felt like these are people that MCU fans like, but we don't need to see them the stars of every episode of a show. You got to remember who the stars of your universe are. And I feel like Marvel Studios either couldn't find ways to fit them in, or just gamble too hard on some of these other storylines. But specifically, they did, I believe, have to remove... I mean, we know from season 1 and season 2 there was like a storyline, a Gamora storyline that we never really got to see.
Each season 1 and season 2 each had an episode that was either moved to the next season or removed entirely, right? Yeah. The Sakaar episode that was in season 2, we know was originally meant for season 1.
Right.
There was a Lego release tied to it, and it just didn't get finished in time. And then I think the Bucky
Red Guardian one
was supposed to be in season 2, and it got bumped to season 3, but that's why they had footage for it at the end of season 2 as like a teaser. And I think a lot of this, like the characters they chose for season 3, they were picking those characters probably like 2 years ago, right? Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the difficulty with animation, and something that Marvel animation has had the growing pains on is seeing how long it takes to animate these things. That's why they've been behind on getting all the episodes out for a season, or they've had to pick these characters super early. Like the fact that the 1872 episode had the Hood as one of the characters, right? I'm sure when they were writing that a couple of years ago, Ironheart was supposed to have come out in 2023. So I'm sure they were kind of surprised with like, oh, sorry, this character's not out yet. You don't know anything about this character.
Yeah.
But we had to put it in because we thought it would be out by now. And so I bet there was a Kang episode that explained how Captain Carter got the time chair.
Yeah.
Thank you to BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. Whenever the calendar ticks over to a new year, it's hard not to reflect on where you are now versus where you were a year ago. Is your situation better? Is it worse? Is it the same? And more importantly, how do you feel about that? But expectations to make immediate, dramatic life changes in 2025 can be overwhelming. Talking to a therapist on BetterHelp can help you break down vague feelings of being behind into specific addressable concerns and develop tools to measure progress on your own terms. Starting with BetterHelp is as easy as ordering gifts on Amazon. Just fill out a questionnaire and you will match with a therapist in as little as a couple days. If the first therapist doesn't feel like the right fit, you can easily switch to another one until you find someone you resonate with. BetterHelp also provides a journal for personal reflection, plus group sessions on a variety of topics that are available every day. Users love BetterHelp. They have over 7,000 reviews and a 4.5 rating on Trustpilot, and it's obvious why. BetterHelp makes sure therapists on their platform are well qualified. If you have any questions, their customer support team is there to help as well. Start fresh any day of the year with BetterHelp. Click the link in the description or go to betterhelp.com/newrockstars and get 10% off your first month of therapy.
So in episode 7 of season 3, it opens with Captain Carter showing up in Kang's time chair from Quantumania, and she knows how to use it. Like, they are arriving to the scene to help Nebula from the season 2 premiere in some kind of event, and she's like warning her about things to come. Like, if you continue down this path, bad things will happen. Like, she has seen the future of that universe. And then she's already in league with Cohorty. Makes sense because we saw it at the end of season 2. But we never saw how she met Storm, like the mighty Storm. We never saw how she met Birdie. They're just already there. And to me, there was something removed there. There must have been some Kang episode where they came across Kang from the end of Quantumania, or just some other Kang variant, and they were going to establish how Kang has been involved in this universe. And specifically, season 2 ended with a shot of Loki's time, well, not Loki, but his time tree that Loki season 2 ended with. And I think the implication from that was that that was going to continue some kind of epilogue from Loki season 2 in animated form. That was the idea of it. But you know, the difference with like season 2 and 3, they were both dropped during the Christmas holiday with these one at a time daily episodes. And none of us who work in YouTube or in content coverage understood why they did that. Like, people watching stuff at home during the holidays are not going to dominate the TV that everyone is sitting around to watch this animated Marvel show that they may care about, but no one else in their family is going to watch. Like, this is not everyone in the family sit around and watch type of show. This is like the one Marvel nerd in your family is watching this show on their own time. Like, during the holidays, people are watching football. They're watching parades. They're watching holiday specials. They're watching Home Alone, Elf, National Lampoons. They're not watching What If. So like, the fact that like Marvel really thought that people would center their holiday schedule around daily appointment watching of What If, there's no way that made sense. That was justified. And it felt like they dumped it. It felt like they just dumped it because they didn't feel confident in it, or because like their original plan for this no longer made sense. And I think there was a Kang episode that after that 2023 Palm Springs retreat, they scrapped those plans and they moved a couple episodes from What If season 2. That's when they made the decision to release season 2 the way they did. And they're like, we'll do the same thing with season 3 a year later. So just spend the rest of the year getting out the rest of these episodes. That's why there was one episode fewer in season 3. And that's why episode 7 began in such a confusing state. But they already had the storyboards and the animation done with the timeshare, and they couldn't change it at that point because that was so instrumental.
To write and animate.
Yeah,
a whole
they would
new
have had
episode.
to come up with a whole new way. They're testing out this 5th dimensional reality shard, and it just would have been too hard to come up with something new at that point.
Also, if you're going to reference the 5th dimension, you got to put a little Age of Aquarius song in there, or like, Let the Sun Shine and give me a little hair. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I want to hear the band.
That's why I'm like, they don't need to scrap their entire plans for Kang. You can still leave the architecture in place. You don't have to address it that much, but you can still imply that there was a timeline manipulators, maybe a timeline manipulator who went by many names across the time stream, who was screwing things up and tying knots in places those they shouldn't have been tied, and cutting branches that shouldn't have been cut. And that's why the multiverse is just kind of a mess right now. And Dr. Doom came in and took advantage of that mess, and then was able to pit different timelines against each other because he is just like the second invader. Like often in history, there are stories of conquerors who were able to make a mess of things and overturn the status quo, but they were not able to govern. And I think the difference between Doom and Kang is that Doom is a proper leader and a governor and can kind of see the pieces and manipulate people and maintain power and hold power. And Kang is just someone who is a revolutionary.
Yeah.
So I think
Alexander the Great formed one of the largest empires we've ever known. Went all the way from Macedonia to India, and then he dies at 33, and there was no one set up to be the successor, and they were like, what do we do now?
Right.
And that's why the Macedonians disappeared, right? Because they had no succession plan in place. So yeah, I think this was a really fun opportunity, or an interesting opportunity, and I think Marvel's been a little afraid to address it, and they just want to act like it was never there.
Right.
But I think you're right. It would have been a fun swerve to be kind of surprised by like, no, this wasn't the villain. We have a new villain coming from behind the curtain that you didn't see there the whole time. Now, it makes sense why they would announce Robert Downey Jr. They got so much press out of it. It's kind of erased the kind of negative feelings around, having this like Jonathan Majors story kind of in the middle of what some consider kind of weaker phases of Marvel, right? They've been really struggling to find their footing again after Endgame, which is maybe a little harsh criticism because Endgame was such an interesting thing that they were able to do. And, they've been trying to start again, and they've got streaming shows, and they've got movies, and they got video games and all this stuff they want you to watch now. So it's kind of hard to compare it all to the buildup of Endgame, but it seems like they're just afraid to acknowledge that they've had to change things. But I think they should lean into it more and leave, like to your point, leave that architecture of Kang there. Just show how another villain has come in and taken advantage of it.
Yeah. Would it have been that much more to bring, like if, say, their plan was to have Jonathan Majors record audio for this mystery 7th Kang episode of season 3. If you decide to part ways with Kang, I think that's fine. If Marvel Studios wants to depart ways with Jonathan Majors, the actor, that's their decision. He was convicted of a crime.
Totally.
That's a serious
you're
felony.
a business. You're a private business. Do whatever you want.
Totally understandable. But to erase the character from the universe feels unnecessary. It is not necessary because there's still a lot of cool things you can do with that character. They could have brought in a different voice actor to do it. I feel like there's plenty of examples in What If alone of different voice actors emulating the live action version of the character.
Totally.
And either way, we're going to see that timeshare in episode 7. You can't act like we're not going to see it and not have opinions and thoughts about like what might have been removed. So like either way, it's going to be a story. I think this is just the flawed thinking of Disney as a corporation, is they think they can just extract things, or they can just put up a wall behind something at Disneyland and think that we just won't see it.
Yeah.
And we'll just focus on the bigger, shinier thing. But that's not going to happen. There's going to be a whole new faction of Disney diehards who are going to be asking about Oswald. Like that's you're going to create a new conspiracy now by trying to cover it up. So why not just embrace it? And just say, like, we're making this decision now. Like I love the Don Cheadle line in Iron Man 2. Like, it's me, I'm here, let's move on, It'd be like not addressing it at all. So I'm just disappointed if that's what they're going to do. If they're just going to completely scrap, if they're never going to address the Quantumania mid-credits scene ever again. I'd be disappointed.
Yeah, if all the address we'll get is what they said in like Loki at the end of Loki season 2, right? Which even that scene could have been added in and like, well, I guess they didn't do any reshoots for Loki. They were very proud of that. They did no reshoots for Loki.
Yeah. I want, if it's not in Fantastic Four first steps, that's fine. Mm-hmm. But at some point, we need to hear Pedro Pascal as Reed Richards kind of project into the future or look into the multiverse or talk to his variants and be like, oh, there is one of our descendants who was a villain who controlled time, and don't ever go to ancient Egypt because there will be one of our descendants named Pharaoh Ramatut who's there waiting, laying a trap for us. Like, there are little things you can do to still keep alive this chunk of the history, because I think it is important, and I think it is really cool, and there's a lot of storytelling opportunity. You don't need to have people asking, well, why can't Jonathan Majors come back? And I think it's also Marvel Studios' flawed thinking that actor equals character, and they keep doing this too much. They refuse to recast. And it's we aren't stupid. We understand that actors are playing characters. Yeah. And I think the character is more valuable to you than the actor. Yeah. But I don't know what it is about Marvel Studios thinking that they feel like we can't have a different actor, that the actor is too iconic. Maybe they just overvalued how important Robert Downey Jr. was.
I think you nailed it right on the head. I think they saw how well that worked, and they just want to replicate it as much as they can, right? I think maybe in 5 years we'll see Johnny Depp play Kang, and then Jonathan Majors show up as Jack Sparrow. I think you just swap them out. You know what I mean? Disney wants them both back for the franchises. You can tell it. They're tasting the air every day. They're like, when can we do this? I think you just swap them.
Do you think that they looked at how Mads Mikkelsen played Grindelwald in that franchise, replacing Johnny Depp, and then that died, and they're like, well, we can't have that happen in our universe? Ooh. That's not the reason why that franchise died. That franchise was flawed to begin with.
Because I was going to try and see if there was anything that the DCEU did that kind of scared them, but they never had any weird recasting. It was so short-lived, most of the DCEU. But if you look at DC, right, at any given time, they've got 5 people playing Batman, 4 people playing Jokers, and everyone's fine with it. Yeah. No one gets mad that Batman shows up on the Harley Quinn animated series, but also is Robert Pattinson, but is also going to be in The Brave and the Bold, but has also got a video game, and they're all different Batmans. We get it. We're used to it now. Yeah. I think Marvel just needs to stop being so afraid of recasting people in these roles. Because, especially for comic book fans, we get used to the character being different every 5 issues. Depending on who's writing for a character and who's drawing them, they can be very different. As you're reading a comic book. So I think we can get used to different people playing these characters. And I worry that the weight of this interconnected universe is just going to crush Disney at some point. Because even if you look at the fact that if you go on a Disney cruise, right, there's story there with these actors. And it's they're still using dead characters. Going to Avengers Campus is so bizarre because you've got Iron Man there. You've got Black Panther there, and sometimes Shuri Black Panther is there too. And you're like, what's going on?
Wanda's there.
Wanda is there. A Black Widow is there. Yeah. And you're like, you're all dead. And you go on a ride at Disneyland Paris that is based on Iron Man. And it's he's dead. What's happening? And then you go on the cruise and then they're involved and you're like, you're dead. Why can't you die?
But they're not dead to the fans, and I think that's why Disneyland is smart.
And they don't want to die, right? You don't want Iron Man to be dead. Your son or your daughter loves this character. They want to interact with them, but it's still tied into the movies, which is very weird because the movies keep going. I don't know.
I think what it was is that Feige or someone else at Marvel Studios was never that excited about Kang the Conqueror. I think Kang the Conqueror came up a lot because in the past 20 years they have kind of retconned other characters from Immortus to Ramatut to Scarlet Centurion to all be different incarnations of Kang. Yeah. And that's not how Kang originally developed. It was they kind of retroactively made Kang connected to all these other characters and then had an interesting role in some recent, but he's someone who's always been around. Yeah. And so I think someone pitched Marvel Studios or internally at Marvel Studios are what if we could do this? And they liked the pitch, but let's find an actor for it. And then they cast Jonathan Majors. Peyton Reed cast Jonathan Majors for Quantumania, and they got him into Loki, and they loved what he did with Loki so much, so it made sense to them. But realistically, I don't know if Feige ever really liked the idea of swapping in Kang in place of Doom for Secret Wars, which is something that I think he was always going to do. And that deep down, he was always like, okay, well, you know, I like what Majors is doing. I think he's a star. We can make this work. And then when all the Majors stuff came out, he's like, I never really liked Kang that much.
He take off one hat and he put on another hat.
So the idea of recasting is like, why don't we just recast the character and just restore it back to what it was? Because Dr. Doom is a beloved character. Doom does get us to that $1 billion mark just on those 4 letters. Now, casting Robert Downey Jr. in that role, I think is sweaty. I think it's like, ooh,
and bringing back the Russos.
Yeah, and bringing back the Russos. It's sweaty.
Double sweaty.
Yeah. I don't know if that was necessary, but I think it will work.
And I think it will work. And I'm ready for, you know, Marvel Studios to kind of get away from just retelling comic book stories. You know, I want to be surprised. They find ways to subvert expectations, right? But I do feel like they're tied to like, well, we've got to put these seminal events in comic books. We got to put them on film because that's what people really want. But a majority of their audience hasn't read these comic books and they don't care. And sometimes going back to these older stories, they're a little clunky and they involve so many characters that, you know, Marvel has not spent the time building out. Like the Beyonder. Do we think the Beyonder's going to show up in these Secret Wars? I don't think so.
I don't know.
And the more you get into cosmic Marvel, the heavier the concepts get. I feel like they already don't know what to do with Celestials and gods and the Eternals. Like they don't know what to do with all these characters with like insane power sets that can reshape a universe. Like it's sticky. So yeah. I want them to just get away from that. Don't worry about retelling comic book stories. Subvert my expectations. Show me new stories. When you get into the X-Men, you know, they're going to have a Sentinel at some point, right? Mm-hmm. The Phoenix Force is going to show up at some point. But like, find a different way to tell me these stories. Like, don't just rehash comic book stories again and again.
Yeah, I feel that way too. I want to be a bit surprised, but I think really Marvel's business model and what has worked for them is not to subvert expectations, but to fulfill expectations.
Sure.
Is to just identify what the most important splash pages have been and to recreate them on film. Mm-hmm. And or just identify what dream scenarios, like Cap wielding Mjolnir, you know, that's an important one. You know, in Avengers Doomsday, we're going to see Robert Downey Jr.'s God Emperor Doom reaching into Thanos' chest and aging him up into a skeleton. That's guaranteed. We're going to see that. Yeah. That is just like, even people who don't read comics know those images exist, but because to be an MCU fan right now is to be someone online, watching videos from new Rockstars and other channels, hearing people like us talk about that, being on Twitter and Reddit and these other places and hearing other comic book nerds talk about these moments and seeing these images and be like, holy shit, that's really cool. Now I want to see that in film. And that's, Kevin Feige understands that. That's why he's putting Doom in these things now, is like, I think Marvel Studios has always been predicated on just like not surprising us, but just fulfilling our wildest dreams that we didn't think were possible. And that is like, I think for people like you and me, not that exciting because we want to watch stories that surprise us. Yeah. But I think in some ways it's also surprising to see them pull off getting Chris Evans back as Johnny Storm in a movie, you know, like that kind of stuff is like, they actually did it. They actually got Toby back. Like there is a bit of surprise, like those madmen, those they got this guy out of his weird hole that he was doing yoga in somewhere in the desert and got him to be in a movie.
Who's the one doing yoga?
Tobey Maguire.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay.
He likes doing yoga.
He's playing cards is what he was doing. Come on. I mean, I will argue the first Iron Man, subverted a ton of expectations at the very end. When he says, I am Iron Man, he announces that was a time when all superhero stories were about secret identities. It was true that Batman Begins comes out the same year, or Dark Knight comes out the same year, right?
Or the next summer, yeah. No, you're right. It is the same
and
summer.
It's like Batman was still obsessed with like not knowing who this person, having the secret identities. Spider-Man was still having the secret identities, right? And Iron Man was like groundbreaking, and that movie comes out, and when you think how it's going to end with him keeping it secret, he's like, no, I'm Iron Man. And that set the stage for the MCU of like, no, a ton of these characters are people that the public knows who they are. Mm-hmm. They know who the person is, and the government's connected to it, and like that. And that has always been a really cool thing that I thought the MCU did really well.
Yeah.
And subverted expectations there. So like, keep doing more of that. And I do like when they tell these stories and they find ways to surprise us. Iron Man 3, people have mixed feelings about it, but like not doing, kind of surprising everyone with the Mandarin being like a fake and all this. Like, that was fun. That's something we didn't see coming. But then, when they were getting into Thanos and it's like you're bringing in the Infinity Stones, I guess they subverted it a little bit with it not being about death, him like courting Lady Death. Like, that was different. But that's all I'm worried about is them just trying to stick to these stories and it doesn't work out. Secret Invasion being a great example of that, where I think they saw, Secret Invasion, comic book fans love it. It was a big thing in the comics. Let's do that. We got to do that. And then I think they realized it was very hard to do, and they didn't want to turn any of their heroes into Skrulls, any of the big ones. R.I.P. Rhodey, you were a Skrull. So they just not even half-assed it, third-assed it, I would say. And it just didn't work. And now it's like, they did it. Can they do it again? I don't know.
Yeah, I think...
Can you do Secret Invasion Part 2? Would anyone want that at this point?
Not like what we saw before.
Unless they have the guts. Unless they have the guts to say Aunt May was always a Skrull.
Yeah. I think
always a Skrull.
If you were to make an Avengers Secret Invasion story, like like Avengers will only ever be a movie, but if you could do like an anthology series over 6 episodes on Disney Plus with some major Avengers actors in it, and they were actually a lot of big stars involved, that'd be a massive budget. I understand that, but like I feel like a ton of people would watch it. Yeah. I think when the MCU has been at its best, it surprises us not by just having someone walk into screen. Like the best, I think Kevin Feige and his team looked back at Iron Man and think that the crowning achievement was Nick Fury walking out of the shadows. But you're right. The crowning achievement was just Robert Downey Jr. ad-libbing I am Iron Man.
Yeah.
And I think Kevin Feige recognizes that was a huge moment and he understands the significance of it. But like what they have done is just bring in more people stepping out of the shadows, or if you're Blade, not even walking into the frame. And that keeps happening where they just have like faces.
Yeah.
Glub Shitos walk in, and really the coolest thing is just when something that you suspected about a character, they just kind of like a character zags where you thought they would zig, and the way they zagged was like actually who you thought they would be. Like I mean, again, Steve picking up Mjolnir, like we never thought they would actually do that, but like we all knew that he was worthy since Ultron, and I thought that was just a brilliant moment when Tony brings back the I am Iron Man line, and he takes the stones from Thanos, and Thanos snaps, and it's just like an empty, sad clunk. And that was just such a cool little moment. And it wasn't like someone just walking into a frame who has some kind of goofy headgear.
Right.
Like I think what they keep doing is doing things like Hercules, in the Love and Thunder post-credit scene.
Yeah.
And like there are people who are like, yeah, Hercules is in it now, but there's other ways that you can surprise fans.
Totally. I mean, even the first kind of tease of Thanos, I remember being in the theater and then, it's like his face turns or whatever. And you see the nut chin, and it wasn't Josh Brolin at that point. It was someone else.
Yeah.
I forget that actor's names. Apologies. And a lot of people were like, who the fuck is that? I don't know. Like you had to be a pretty big comic book nerd to know Thanos, I think. That wasn't even for like casual fans of comic books as much. Because he would only show up in like certain storylines. So them relying on just these reveals of characters that you then have to look up on your phone. Most audience members have to look up on their phone. That's not the subversion I like. It is when they surprise us with stories. I mean, the blip, great surprise. No one saw it coming. Lots of fun. I think they regret ever doing it though, because man, it's just made their storytelling complicated in this universe where everything's connected. Because anytime a new character comes, were they blipped?
Looking back,
were they blipped?
What was like the best post-credit scene? The Nick Fury post-credit scene was great after Iron Man. Like some are just funny, some are world building, but what's the one that actually does the job other than Nick Fury? Like one that actually lived up to what we're talking about of like subverting expectations, but like pronouncing a larger world. I'm having trouble because I think right now maybe we're just too jaded to love the last really good.
Because a lot of them, early on, a lot of them were just scenes from the next movie, right? I'm thinking of like Thor talking to Doctor Strange was wild. Mm-hmm. That was great. But that was just teasing a scene that was coming up in a movie. Yeah, and even like them catching Bucky and like talking, they've caught Bucky. But that was just coming up in the next movie. Yeah,
I love the WandaVision post-credit scene.
Yeah.
As much as that, like, in some ways,
her at the cabin?
Just I thought, like, the visuals of it was really creepy, and there's like a lot of cool questions that were set up by it.
I mean, I like the Multiverse of Madness one because I love Charlize Theron, and like her showing up was just great. But that's another one where it's like, man, when will we see Clea and Doctor Strange hanging out again? Right?
Yeah.
Not until after Secret Wars.
I have no idea. I think the shock that I felt seeing J.K. Simmons return, and the thing is he's a familiar person and he's in the world of Peter Parker. I just thought was really fun. Like Peter Parker being exposed in that way was what I was most excited by. Like he's now publicly, he was the one like private superhero in the MCU, and to have him exposed in the Far From Home post credits.
Also, Multiverse of Madness had Bruce Campbell looking directly into the camera, going, "It's over.
It's over." Yeah,
that's great. I love that one. I mean, I still love the original Spider-Man Homecoming, where it's just Cap walking into frame.
Oh yeah,
being like disappointment.
They're these like cute ones that like that's kind of Deadpool and Wolverine felt like a cute one. You know, if there was an actual Gambit moment, that's kind of fun. Like this character still has a future and just a sparkle portal on his face. Like that's fun. Like I want more of that. Like some character survived who you didn't expect survived.
Pangborn getting his magic taken away by Baron Mordo. Devastating. He was so good on the court.
Yeah, let us know in the comments. There's probably some that we're missing.
Yeah, I'm not thinking.
I mean, before Infinity War, a lot of stuff was like setting up Thanos' arrival, and Ragnarok. You know, it was.
Which one was just a trailer for Multiverse of Madness? Was it the end of Spider-Man: No Way Home? It was just a trailer for Multiverse of Madness.
Yeah, well, we had the Venom post-credit scene. There was like a mid-credit scene with Eddie Brock in the bar, but then yeah,
and that paid off. Wow.
Well, this week
I need to make a margarita, Eddie.
It did. They actually built the whole first act of Venom: The Last Dance.
That was the longest sequence I've ever seen.
So weird.
Tequila is drinking. Oh, this thing has arms. It's crazy. I was born with them.
Pee-wee Herman
crazy.
Dance. Yeah, very, very weird. All right, coming up this week on New Rockstars, I have no idea, to be honest.
What are we going to do this week on New Rockstars?
We're going to be doing Creature Commandos. Creature Commandos, like the full season breakdown of all the episodes. We haven't been covering it week by week.
Yeah, the final episode, that's January 9th.
Yeah.
So after that, we'll put out our full season breakdown of that show. Have you been watching Creature Commandos?
Yeah, I've been watching it. Yeah, it's like fun. It's really cool. We just got to see Gotham. Yeah. Like the DCU Gotham. Looks great. Like they already have a great idea for it.
James Gunn's music choices on this show are wild. It is
very
a
weird.
Tight window of like early 2000s international punk rock.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. It's very weird. It's a little bit of like every villain's really just a good guy who had a bad day. I don't like that as much.
Yeah.
But we'll save it.
And other than that, I'm not really sure. It's going to be an interesting month here on New Rockstars.
Yeah.
We're still kind of like coming back from the holidays, but we have a lot of different videos in the works that we'll be catching up on everything. So stay with us. And then let's end with a round of what we're watching.
What we're watching.
What are you watching? What did you watch over the Christmas break?
My guy. I just started, I think it's already over, but like I just got into The Day of the Jackal on Peacock. If you're a fan of spy shows, there are so many good spy shows on streaming services right now. There's The Day of the Jackal. There's Black Doves. There's The Agency, which is on Showtime. Showtime, if you're listening, please give me a free subscription so I can watch The Agency. I love like kind of that spy TV, and it's really in a good resurgence right now. But Day of the Jackal on Peacock is good.
All right.
Eddie Redmayne's great in it. It's some very good action sequences, car chases, like it has a great song in the title sequence. It feels very James Bond. It's international. It's sexy. It's violent. Really good show. Really enjoying that. And of course, still keeping up with the challenge. Only one episode left. I don't know how caught up you are.
Yeah.
It's a 2-part finale, and you know how those are. But I'm very interested to see. I've only got one guy left in my fantasy draft. Bananas. You're a piece of shit, but man, I need you to score a lot of points so I can win my fantasy. Come on.
Yeah, we have the Traitors coming up.
Pitch me on the Traitors. Why should I watch the Traitors? Do I need to watch all the previous seasons?
No.
Okay.
You really don't. And if you do, they're real fast, and there's so few seasons to catch up on.
Is it like a live? Is it like a game of Mafia? Is that what I'm watching?
It's like Werewolf.
But is it's worth watching, you think?
Yeah. Only because they bring back, it's almost like a season of Survivor All-Stars. Okay. There are people from the challenge who show up. CT and Bananas have showed up. This new season has Boston Rob. So if you like Parvati from Survivor, Sandra from Survivor has been on it. It is it's a pretty good social deduction game. I mean, Alan Cumming is my pitch. Yeah. He just hanging out with that guy. He is a delight.
And he's like kind of doing a character on the show, right?
He is. He's doing this character, and it's a pretty effective social deduction game. Season 1 of the UK version, no famous people are.
Oh, okay.
So it's just watching like well-meaning British people lie to each other to their faces.
I mean, I love the show Taskmaster.
I haven't seen that.
That's a great show.
Yeah.
From England that they've tried to do in so many other countries. They tried to do a US one, did not work. Yeah. I think there's an Australian one that's fairly successful, but I highly recommend Taskmaster. And if you're in the US, all their episodes are on their YouTube channel. You don't even have to like pirate it or anything. That's a very fun show.
The Traders is a more cutthroat version of the social deduction and just social gaming that you see on Big Brother and Survivor and The Challenge, in that like they're only there for like 10 to 15 days. Like, it happens over the course of 2 weeks. It's not like on Survivor where you spend months, or not months, like a month and a half if you go all the way through the end. Yeah. Like, people on Survivor feel like they get to know each other. Friendships are formed. Relationships are formed. That doesn't happen on the Traders. The Traders, like, they hang out. It's like summer camp.
Okay.
And then, so they're much more willing to backstab each other. And that is happening all the time. You don't have, like, alliances
forming.
Are
they sleeping in there?
No, you don't see their lives. They stay, like, in a hotel, but they dress it up as if they're all staying at, like, this castle in Scotland. And it's not. Like, you just see them in this, like, pre-tape as they walk from one part of it to another. And they clearly just, they have these sets that they build. And then they just spend all their day sitting around and, like, kind of drinking. And they do challenges just to build the pot. But the challenges suck. I just don't think the challenges are very good on the Traders. Maybe they will be in this season.
You're not selling me on this show.
I know. It's not for everyone. But if you like the social part of the game rather than the physical part of the game, the Traders is for you.
Okay. Maybe I'll check it out.
I mean, Sandra's really freaking good at it. Sandra's good. CT's good. Like,
I know pretty good. Nikki Bella, I think she's Nikki Garcia now, former wrestler, was on a season or is going to be on this upcoming season. I don't know.
What I don't like about it is that they get a lot of like Real Housewives in it. So like, I think they're trying to appeal to reality TV watchers like my wife. And if you watch those types of shows, it's even better for you. For me, I don't watch any of the Real Housewives stuff. So I don't like any of them. Yeah. I think they're all like uninteresting, not smart, like without tactics, people who are just like, why would I betray my friend? And it's like, you are already wealthy and you're just doing this for more fame. Yeah. Whereas someone like CT gets in there and he's like, I don't want to game myself. I got
you know, so then you'll gang it get up. My wife hates my CT voice because she loves CT and I love doing it.
And Sandra's like, another game for me to play. I'm going to master this game as well because she is like uniquely good at just like seeing different social dynamics. Anyway.
I'll also make this pitch now. If you're watching this episode of Sneak Peek on Sunday, January 5th, tomorrow, Raw. WWE Raw comes to Netflix, okay? Everyone's got Netflix. If you've never got into wrestling before, check it out. They're gonna give you a big show Monday, January 6th. This is gonna be their big introduction to a whole new audience. If you've ever thought about wrestling, now's your chance. Get in, okay? Watch this, see if you like it. You'll have the Royal Rumble in February, WrestleMania in April. Okay, this is a great time of year to get into wrestling. If you've ever considered it, this could be your moment.
Check it out.
Check it out.
All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Sneak Peek. If you haven't already, check out nerdriot.shop for some amazing shirt designs. We have this Neil Nation, I Just Want to Go Home shirt. I love it so much. We also have a channel membership where you can just hit the join button by the subscribe button here on YouTube. And there's all kinds of great like perks. And it's just like a great way to support what we're doing here at New Rockstars. Thanks, everybody. Happy New Year. And we'll see you next time.
Happy New Year.